It's 2 a.m., Wednesday morning, Hell Week. A Navy SEAL candidate is standing waist deep in the Pacific Ocean. The water is 58 degrees. He's been awake for 72 hours straight. He's shivering so violently his teeth are chattering. His uniform is caked with sand. Salt water burns every cut on his body. And here's the thing, physically he's fine. His muscles work. His heart is strong. His body could keep going for days, but his brain is screaming at him to quit. It's telling him he can't do this anymore. It's convincing him that he's reached his limit. 75% of SEAL candidates believe that voice. They ring the bell, they quit. But the 25% who make it through, they discovered something that the Navy SEALs have known for 60 years. Something that completely changes how you think about human performance. Here's what's weird about Hell Week, and I mean really weird. The physical requirements aren't actually that extreme. Yeah, it's brutal. 5.5 days, running 200 miles, 20 plus hours of physical training per day, only 4 hours of total sleep. But these are young, fit military candidates who trained for months to get here. Their bodies are prepared, they can do it physically. So why do 75% of them quit? Most people assume it's because their bodies break down. Injuries, physical exhaustion. They just can't keep going physically, right? Wrong. The official Navy SEAL training website says something that should make you stop and think. I'm reading this word for word from their doctrine. SEAL candidates commonly have the mistaken belief that Hell Week is all about physical strength. Actually, it's as much mental as it is physical. It's their minds that give up on them, not their bodies. Wait, their minds give up, not their bodies? That doesn't make sense. How can your mind quit before your body actually needs to stop? In the 1960s, when the Navy SEALs were designing Hell Week, they discovered something that most people still don't understand today. Your brain has a built-in safety mechanism, and it's wildly catastrophically miscalibrated. See, your brain evolved to keep you alive, and to do that, it needs to protect you from danger. So it developed this early warning system, a mental alarm that goes off when it thinks you're approaching your limits. The problem? That alarm doesn't go off at 90% of your capacity, or even 50%. It goes off at about 5%. The Navy SEALs documented this. They call it the 20x principle, and it's written directly into their training philosophy. You are capable of 20 times more than you think you are. Not 20% more. 20 times more. That's not motivational talk. That's documented observation from 60 years of watching thousands of candidates go through the most extreme training in the US military. But here's the question nobody asks. If this is true, why does our brain lie to us? And how do the SEALs actually prove this to candidates? This is where Hell Week gets interesting and a little bit dark. The SEALs figured out that the only way to prove the 20x principle to someone is to strip away their ability to rationalize quitting. You have to remove the mental tools they use to convince themselves they've hit their limit. And the tool they use? Sleep deprivation. 4 hours of sleep total across 5.5 days. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so they're testing if you can operate without sleep. Makes sense for combat. But that's not what they're testing. Watch this. When you remove sleep, something fascinating happens to your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that handles rational decision-making, planning, rationalizing, starts to shut down. You lose your ability to negotiate with yourself. You lose your ability to create convincing stories about why you should quit. What's left? Pure willpower. The raw signal from your body about whether it can actually continue. And here's what the SEALs discovered. That raw signal says, keep going way longer than your conscious mind thinks possible. Candidates start hallucinating by day 3. One guy reported seeing trees moving and attacking his boat. Another mistook a SEAL instructor in a dive mask for an actual SEAL and tried to hit him with a paddle. They're literally seeing things that aren't there. Their brains are malfunctioning, but their bodies still performing, still running, still swimming, still carrying 300-pound logs over their heads. The hallucinations aren't a sign that their body is breaking down. It's a sign that their mental barriers are breaking down. And once those barriers are gone, candidates discover what they're actually capable of. Let me give you some specific examples, because this sounds impossible. By Thursday night of Hell Week, candidates are so exhausted that they fall asleep while eating. Instructors have to physically pull them out of their food. But here's the thing, they can still perform immediately after. Wake them up and they can run another mile, do another set of push-ups, paddle their boat through the surf. Some candidates fall asleep while paddling their inflatable boats. Their teammates have to pull them out of the water. But again, their bodies are still functional. Their muscles still work. Their cardiovascular system is fine. The official dropout stats prove this. Of the 75% who quit Hell Week, the vast majority are physically capable of finishing. They don't have injuries that prevent them from continuing. They're not hospitalized. They just decide they can't do it anymore. The Navy tracks this obsessively. They know that mental breakdown, not physical breakdown, is the primary cause of failure. And here's the most insane part. The candidates who make it through Hell Week report that Friday afternoon, when it ends, they feel like they could keep going. One SEAL said, "I was shocked that it was over. I thought, wait, I can do more." After 5.5 days of hell, after the worst experience of their life, their first thought is, I could do more. That's the 20 times principle in action. So here's what the Navy SEALs knew that we didn't. Your mental limits are not real. Or more precisely, they're real, but they're not accurate. Your brain has a quit signal that's designed to protect you, but evolution calibrated that signal for a world where every physical challenge was potentially life-threatening. Hunt too hard, you might not make it back to the cave. Run too far, you might collapse and get eaten by a predator. So your brain learned to send the stop signal early, really early, as a safety buffer. But here's the problem. That buffer is huge. Your brain tells you to stop when you've used about 5% of your actual capacity. It's like a car that says empty, when the tank is still 95% full. The SEALs figured out that most people never push past that first empty signal. They feel tired, they feel pain, they feel discomfort, and they stop. They never discover what's on the other side of that mental barrier. But what is on the other side? This is the part that's going to sound crazy, but it's documented. A second wind that's 20 times stronger than what you think you're capable of. The SEALs have a saying, the body achieves what the mind believes. But they mean it in the opposite way most people think. It's not about positive thinking. It's about realizing that your mind is actively limiting what your body can achieve by lying to you about where your limits are. And here's where it gets really interesting. This doesn't just apply to physical challenges. Think about the last time you quit something difficult. Maybe it was a workout, maybe it was studying for an exam, maybe it was working on a business idea, maybe it was a difficult conversation you needed to have. Ask yourself, did you quit because you were actually at your limit? Or did you quit because your brain told you that you were at your limit? Because here's what the SEALs proved. You can't trust that voice. That voice, the one that says, I can't do this anymore, this is too hard, I need to stop, that voice is almost always lying to you. It's not malicious. It's trying to protect you. But it's using a threat assessment system designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore. You're not going to get eaten by a lion if you do one more set at the gym. You're not going to die if you work on your business for another hour when you're tired. But your brain doesn't know that, so it hits the panic button early. The SEALs figured out how to train candidates to recognize that voice and ignore it, not by teaching them to be tough or macho, but by putting them in situations where they're forced to go way past that first mental barrier, and then showing them they're still alive, still functional, still capable. Hell Week isn't about testing whether you're physically tough enough. It's about proving to you that your mental limits are a lie. And once you know that, once you've experienced pushing 10 times, 15 times, 20 times past where your brain told you to stop, you can never unknow it. That's why SEALs who complete Hell Week say it's the single greatest achievement of their lives. Not because it was physically the hardest thing they ever did, but because it permanently rewired how they think about their own limits. Now, I'm not saying you need to do Hell Week. You don't need to stay awake for 5 days and run 200 miles to learn this lesson. But here's what you can do. The next time your brain tells you to quit something, stop and ask yourself a question. Am I actually at my limit, or is this just the first warning signal? Because if it's the first warning signal, and 95% of the time it is, then you have way more in the tank than you think. Maybe you're at the gym and you think you can't do another rep. Try 2 more, see what happens. Maybe you're working on a project and you think you're too tired to continue. Work for 10 more minutes. See what happens. Maybe you're in a difficult conversation and you want to give up and walk away. Stay for 5 more minutes. See what happens. I'm not saying ignore legitimate injuries or push yourself to collapse. The SEALs don't do that either. They have medical staff monitoring candidates constantly during Hell Week. But I am saying that 19 times out of 20, when your brain tells you you've hit your limit, you haven't. You're not even close. The Navy SEALs proved this with 60 years of data and thousands of candidates. They proved that humans are capable of 20 times more than we think we are. They proved that our mental limits are almost entirely illusion. And here's the thing. Once you start testing this in your own life, you're going to realize something profound. Most people never discover what they're actually capable of. They hit that first mental barrier, the one that triggers at 5% capacity, and they stop. They think they've reached their limit. They think they've given it their all, but they haven't. They've given 5%. The question is, are you willing to find out what your 20x looks like? The SEALs have a phrase they use during Hell Week. When a candidate is considering quitting, an instructor might say to them, "Don't quit on a bad day," because they know that the moment you want to quit, the moment your brain is screaming at you to stop, that moment is almost never an accurate assessment of your actual capacity. It's just your brain's early warning system misfiring. The truth is, your limits are about 20 times further out than where your brain tells you they are. That's not motivation. That's neuroscience. That's evolutionary biology. That's 60 years of documented military training data. Your brain evolved to keep you safe by making you quit early. But you don't live in a world where that's necessary anymore. You live in a world where the biggest threat to achieving your potential isn't physical danger, it's mental barriers that don't actually exist. The Navy SEALs figured this out in the 1960s. They built an entire training program around proving it to candidates. And every SEAL who makes it through Hell Week carries that knowledge with them forever. The limits you think you have are almost entirely in your head. So the next time you're tempted to quit something hard, at the gym, at work, in your relationships, in your life, remember this. You haven't hit your limit. You've hit 5% of your limit. You're capable of 20 times more than you think you are. The SEALs proved it. Now it's time for you to prove it to yourself. Thanks for watching. Now get back to work. You've got 95% of your capacity left to use.